Moving to Thailand with my new girl, starting fresh. The words on my husband Derek's Facebook post burned into my eyes as I sat at my desk that Tuesday morning. My coffee grew cold beside me as comments started flooding in. Shocked faces, questions, and sympathy reactions from our mutual friends. With trembling fingers, I typed a single-word reply. Okay. My name is Elena Mitchell, and I'm a 52-year-old software engineer living in Chicago. After 23 years of marriage, my husband decided to announce the end of our relationship through social media, thinking I was too naive to fight back. What he didn't know was that I had been watching, waiting, and preparing for months. The signs had started appearing last spring. Derek began working late, guarding his phone like it contained state secrets, and making mysterious weekend business trips. But the real red flag was when he started asking questions about our retirement accounts and investment portfolio. As a senior manager at a construction company, Derek had always left the financial planning to me. His sudden interest sent warning bells ringing through my mind. "You're being paranoid," my sister Kate told me when I first shared my suspicions. Derek wouldn't throw away 23 years of marriage, but I knew better. The same instincts that made me successful in debugging complex computer systems were telling me something was very wrong in my marriage. I started documenting everything. Every late night, every suspicious credit card charge, every password to our joint accounts. I created a folder on my work computer labeled System Backup 2023. Innocent enough if Derek ever saw it, but inside was a detailed record of his increasingly suspicious behavior. The Facebook post was his final act of arrogance. Looking at his smiling profile picture, the one I'd taken during our anniversary dinner just 6 months ago, I felt a strange sense of calm. While he thought he was making a grand exit, he had no idea that I'd spent the last 3 months consulting with Diana, the best divorce attorney in Chicago. I'd already moved most of our joint assets into accounts under my control, documented his pattern of financial manipulation, and secured copies of all our important papers. Derek always joked that I was just a computer nerd who didn't understand how the real world worked. He assumed I would fall apart without him, like some helpless damsel in distress. But 25 years of coding had taught me one vital lesson. The best programs anticipate all possible failure scenarios, and I had planned for this one meticulously. Living with Derek had become a masterclass in overlooking red flags. We met at Northwestern University when I was completing my master's in computer science, and he was finishing his business degree. Back then, I was impressed by his confidence and ambition. He seemed different from the other guys in my program. He could talk about things beyond coding and actually made me laugh. The early years of our marriage were good, or at least I thought they were. We bought our first home in Lincoln Park, a beautiful Victorian that needed work but had potential. I took a job at a growing tech company while Derek climbed the corporate ladder at his construction firm. We talked about having children, but my first pregnancy ended in miscarriage, and somehow, we never tried again. Instead, we poured ourselves into our careers. Looking back, I should have noticed how Derek's attitude toward me shifted as my career took off. When I was promoted to lead engineer, he dismissed it as just playing with computers. When my salary surpassed his, he started making snide comments about how I was lucky to be a woman in tech. But I kept making excuses for him, thinking that's what a good wife did. My wake-up call came during a dinner party last March. Derek was bragging about a new project his company had landed, and someone asked about the software they were using to manage it. Before I could answer, Derek cut in saying, "Oh, Elena doesn't understand these things. She just does basic programming." I felt my face burn as our friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew I had designed similar systems for major corporations, but Derek couldn't stand acknowledging my expertise. That night, after everyone left, I started paying closer attention. I noticed how Derek would leave the room to take phone calls, how he changed his phone's password, how he began mentioning a new project coordinator named Jessica, with increasing frequency. Then came the weekend conferences that he couldn't quite explain and receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. My sister Kate was the only one who knew what was really happening. "You need to protect yourself," she urged over coffee one morning. "Derek's not just having an affair. He's planning something." She worked in banking and had seen too many women left financially devastated by divorces they didn't see coming. I took her advice to heart. While Derek thought I was absorbed in my computer games, I was actually documenting every suspicious transaction, every unexplained absence, every passive-aggressive comment. I set up a private email account and began forward all important financial documents there. I started squirreling away money in a separate account, just as Kate suggested. It wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. The day after Derek's Facebook announcement, I walked into our kitchen to find him smugly drinking coffee, studying my face for signs of a breakdown. "We need to talk," he said, as if he hadn't just broadcast our marital collapse to the entire world. "I've already spoken with a lawyer about dividing our assets." The confidence in his voice made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. I remembered Diana's advice. Let him think he's in control. Men like Derek hang themselves with their own arrogance. "I assume Jessica is the new girl you mentioned?" I asked calmly, pouring myself a cup of coffee. His eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected me to know her name. "The project coordinator from your Singapore development? How did you—" He started, then caught himself. "It doesn't matter. Elena, I'm not going to be cruel about this. You can keep the house. I just need you to transfer my share of our retirement accounts and investment portfolio. My lawyer will be sending over the paperwork." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "Of course, I'll have my lawyer review everything when it arrives." The flash of uncertainty in his eyes was brief but satisfying. He clearly hadn't expected me to have already retained legal counsel. "Your lawyer?" He scoffed, trying to regain his footing. "Come on, Elena. Don't make this difficult. We both know you're not cut out for a legal battle." He reached for his phone, probably to check his accounts, and I watched as his face shifted from confidence to confusion. "That's strange," he muttered, tapping frantically at his screen. "The banking app isn't working." He tried another app, then another. The crease between his eyebrows deepened. "What's going on with my phone?" I set down my coffee cup. "Maybe you should check your email, the one you use for all our financial accounts." I watched as he pulled up his email on his phone, his face growing paler by the second. "Oh wait, you can't. I changed all the passwords last night. Two-factor authentication is a wonderful thing, isn't it?" "You can't do this!" he sputtered, his arrogance finally cracking. "That's my money too." "Actually," I replied, sliding a folder across the counter, "I can. You'll find copies of all the documentation in here. Your unauthorized withdrawals from our joint accounts, the money transfers to Jessica's account in Singapore, the empty investment account you created in your name. My lawyer has the originals." Derek's face went from pale to red. "You've been spying on me?" "No, Derek, I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." I stood up, gathering my things. "By the way, Thailand has an extradition treaty with the US. Just something to consider before you try accessing any of our accounts from there." Derek spent the next few hours frantically calling his lawyer while I packed my overnight bag. I had already arranged to stay with Kate until things settled down. As I folded my clothes, I could hear him in his home office, his voice getting increasingly agitated. "What do you mean she has documentation? Those transfers were private." He paused, listening. "No, you don't understand. She's just a programmer. She couldn't have—" "What do you mean forensic accounting?" I allowed myself a small smile as I zipped up my suitcase. Diana had warned me that men like Derek always underestimate their wives. "The smart ones," she'd said during our first meeting, "are the ones who use that underestimation to their advantage." When Derek finally emerged from his office, his face was ashen. "The lawyer says you filed for divorce citing financial abuse and adultery." His voice was quieter now, the smugness replaced by something closer to fear. "He says you have proof of everything." "That's right," I replied, checking my phone as another email notification came in. Oh, and it looks like your company's HR department just received an anonymous tip about certain irregularities in your project expenses. Specifically, all those romantic dinners with Jessica that you charged to the Singapore development account. You wouldn't, he whispered, but we both knew I already had. I also took the liberty of forwarding those questionable expense reports to the board of directors, I continued. They seemed particularly interested in the weekend trips to Miami that you logged as client meetings. Funny, I don't remember Miami having anything to do with the Singapore project. Derek sank into the couch, his face in his hands. Elena, please, we can talk about this. I made a mistake, I see that now. A mistake? I felt 23 years of suppressed anger rising in my throat. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. A mistake is buying the wrong brand of coffee. Broadcasting your affair on Facebook and trying to steal our retirement savings. That's not a mistake, Derek. That's a choice. My phone buzzed again. Another email from Diana. Well, would you look at that? I said, scanning the message. The judge has granted an emergency injunction freezing all our joint assets pending the divorce proceedings. I guess those records of your transfers to Jessica's account came in handy after all. What am I supposed to do? Derek asked, his voice small. All my credit cards are linked to our joint accounts. I shouldered my bag and headed for the door. You know, there's a certain irony here. You always said I spent too much time playing with computers. But it turns out all that playing taught me exactly how to track digital paper trails. Every login, every transfer, every deleted email, they all leave traces if you know where to look. Over the next few days, Derek's perfectly planned escape to Thailand crumbled piece by piece. His company placed him on administrative leave, pending an investigation into his expense reports. Jessica, it turned out, had her own secrets. She was already married to someone else in Singapore. When the company's investigation brought that to light, she quickly disappeared from Derek's life, blocking him on every platform. I watched it all unfold from the safety of Kate's guest room, where I spent my evenings updating Diana on Derek's increasingly desperate attempts to access our accounts. He tried calling our bank, but without the two-factor authentication codes now tied to my phone, he couldn't verify his identity. He tried sweet-talking our financial advisor, only to discover I'd already informed him of the situation and provided copies of the court order. You've got him cornered, Kate said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. But aren't you worried he might try something drastic? I shook my head. That's why I made sure to save his Facebook post and all the responses. If he tries anything, it'll only prove my case about his character to the judge. The breaking point came when Derek's lawyer withdrew from the case. I later learned that Diana had sent him the complete file of evidence I'd gathered, every suspicious transaction, every inappropriate expense report, every message between Derek and Jessica that I'd managed to recover from our shared cloud storage. Derek started calling me constantly, switching between threats and pleas. You've ruined my life, he shouted in one voicemail. I'll make you regret this. In the next, baby, please, I made a terrible mistake. We can work this out. I didn't respond to any of his messages. Instead, I forwarded each threatening voicemail to Diana, who added them to our growing file of evidence. Every threat he made only strengthened my position. The final blow came when his company concluded their investigation. Not only had Derek been misusing company funds to finance his affair with Jessica, but he'd also been skimming money from project budgets for years. They fired him immediately and filed criminal charges for embezzlement. I was in Diana's office when we got the news. Still think you want to move to Thailand? She asked dryly as she read the email from the company's lawyers. Because now would probably be a good time. I couldn't help but laugh. All those years of Derek treating me like I was naive, like I couldn't possibly understand the real world of business and money. Yet here he was, undone by the very skills he'd dismissed. My attention to detail, my understanding of digital forensics, my ability to follow complex paper trails through computer systems. You know what the best part is? I told Diana. He still has no idea how long I knew, how long I was gathering evidence while he thought I was just his clueless tech wife. 3 weeks after Derek's Facebook announcement, I returned to our house to collect more of my things. I found him sitting on the front steps, unshaven, and wearing wrinkled clothes. The sight was jarring. This disheveled man was nothing like the polished executive who'd been so proud of his fresh start plan. "Elena," he called out as I walked past him to unlock the door. "Please, can we just talk? I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my future." "And whose fault is that?" I asked, finally turning to face him. "You didn't just try to leave me, Derek. You tried to destroy me. You honestly thought I would just sit there and watch while you drained our accounts and ran off to Thailand with your girlfriend." "I never meant," he started, but I cut him off. "Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. The only thing you didn't mean to do was fail." I pulled out my phone and showed him his Facebook post, still up there for everyone to see. "You were so proud of yourself, weren't you? So sure that your silly wife would never see it coming." He slumped further, running his hands through his unkempt hair. "The company is pressing charges. They're saying I could face jail time. And Jessica, she won't even answer my calls anymore." "Imagine that," I said dryly. "A woman who'd help a married man steal from his wife and company turned out to be untrustworthy. I'm shocked." "I've got nothing left," he whispered. "They've frozen my accounts, my credit cards are maxed out, and no one will hire me. I can't even afford a decent lawyer anymore." I thought about all the times he'd belittled my career, called my work insignificant, treated me like I was beneath him. Now here he was, undone by the very skills he'd mocked. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" I asked, my hand on the doorknob. "It wasn't the affair, or the stealing, or even that ridiculous Facebook post. It was spending 23 years underestimating me. You were so convinced that I was just some naive programmer who couldn't possibly understand your brilliant schemes." "Elena, please," he tried one last time. "We can start over. I'll make it up to you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. "No, Derek, we can't. But you were right about one thing." I gestured to his Facebook post on my phone. "Someone is getting a fresh start. It's just not you." I left him there on the steps and walked into the house, heading straight for my home office. Through the window, I could see him slowly walking away, shoulders slumped, finally understanding just how completely his plan had backfired. Life settled into a new rhythm after Derek's departure. I moved back into our house, now legally mine as part of the divorce settlement, and focused on healing. Kate stayed with me that first week, helping me rearrange furniture and repaint walls, erasing the traces of my old life with Derek. The divorce proceedings moved quickly, especially after Derek's criminal charges came to light. His new lawyer, clearly less qualified than his previous one, advised him to agree to my terms to gain some goodwill with the prosecution. I got the house, my retirement accounts remained untouched, and most importantly, I got my freedom. Word spread quickly through our social circle. Friends who had commented on Derek's Facebook post now reached out to me privately, offering support and sharing their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Sarah, my colleague from work, convinced me to join her women's support group. At first, I felt out of place. I was the only one there who had managed to turn the tables on her ex. But soon I found myself sharing advice about financial security and digital awareness. "You should teach a class," Sarah suggested one evening after group. "There are so many women out there who don't know how to protect themselves financially." The idea took root in my mind, and I started putting together a workshop on digital financial security for women going through divorce. My first workshop was small, just 8 women gathered in a community center conference room. But as I shared my story and the steps I'd taken to protect myself, I saw something change in their eyes. These women had felt powerless just as I had in the beginning. By the end of the session, they were taking notes furiously, asking questions about bank accounts and password security. The workshops grew. Word spread through divorce attorney offices and women's support networks. Diana even started referring her clients to me. "You're teaching them things their lawyers don't even know," she told me. "You're giving them their power back." I heard through the grapevine that Derek had taken a plea deal on the embezzlement charges. He would serve 18 months in a minimum security prison, followed by probation. Jessica, it turned out, had moved on to her next target, another married executive with access to company funds. Sometimes I wondered if he ever realized how completely his plan had backfired. One morning, about 6 months after Derek's Facebook post, I was checking my email and found a message from a woman in Seattle. She had attended one of my virtual workshops and used my advice to uncover her husband's hidden cryptocurrency accounts before he could drain their savings. "You saved my future," she wrote. "I was ready to give up and accept whatever he offered, but you helped me find my strength." I sat there, reading her words over and over, feeling tears well up in my eyes. All those years of Derek dismissing my skills, treating me like I was somehow less than him. They had led me here, to this moment where I could help other women protect themselves. There was a certain poetry to it that even my tech-oriented mind could appreciate. As my workshops gained momentum, I found myself facing a decision I never expected. My tech company offered me a sabbatical to focus on developing a comprehensive financial security program for women. The irony wasn't lost on me. The career Derek had dismissed as playing with computers was now enabling me to help others avoid the fate he had planned for me. Kate helped me set up a proper website for the workshops. "You need to document everything," she insisted. "Your story could help thousands of women." She was right. Within months, I was receiving invitations to speak at women's conferences and legal seminars across the country. During one of these seminars, I ran into Jessica's husband, the one in Singapore she'd been married to while pursuing Derek. He had flown in specifically to thank me. My evidence had helped him uncover not just the affair with Derek, but a pattern of similar schemes with other executives. "You saved me from losing everything," he said, shaking my hand. She had it all planned out, just like with Derek. The monthly support group meetings became a cornerstone of my healing process. I watched women arrive broken and scared, then gradually transform into confident survivors. Many of them had stories similar to mine. Husbands who had underestimated them, thinking they were too naive or too weak to fight back. One evening, as I was leaving a workshop, I received a notification on my phone. Derek had finally deleted his Facebook post about Thailand. His profile had been quiet since he began his prison sentence, but that post had remained up all this time, a digital monument to his arrogance. Its deletion felt like the closing of a chapter. I celebrated by treating myself to dinner at the same restaurant where Derek and I had our last anniversary meal. But this time, instead of sitting across from a man who was secretly plotting to betray me, I sat alone with my laptop, finalizing the manuscript for my book, Digital Breadcrumbs, A Woman's Guide to Financial Self-Defense. Diana wrote the foreword for the book. "Elena's story isn't just about revenge," she wrote. "It's about reclaiming your power and using it to lift others up." She was right. Every workshop, every speaking engagement, every woman I helped, it all healed something in me that Derek had tried to break. The advance copy of my book arrived on the same day as my final divorce decree. I placed them side by side on my desk, one document marking the end of my old life, the other marking the beginning of something new and unexpected. My phone buzzed with a text from Kate. "Dinner to celebrate?" I looked around my home office, now converted into the headquarters for my financial security workshops. The wall was covered with thank you notes from women who had used my advice to protect themselves. Each one represented a story of empowerment, of a woman refusing to be a victim. A year after Derek's Facebook announcement, I received an unexpected email from his sister, Marie. She had attended one of my workshops in Boston, not realizing who I was until I shared my story. "I always knew Derek was selfish," she wrote, "but I never imagined he would do something so calculated. I'm proud of you for fighting back." Her words hit me differently than all the other messages of support I'd received. This was Derek's own sister acknowledging not just his betrayal, but my strength in overcoming it. I realized then how far I'd come from that morning when I first saw his Facebook post. The woman I was then would have crumbled, might have even begged him to stay. She would have believed his lies about her being naive and helpless. But that woman was gone, transformed by the very crisis that was meant to destroy her. In her place stood someone stronger, a woman who had turned her pain into purpose. The workshops and speaking engagements weren't just about helping other women anymore. They had become my mission. Every time I helped another woman protect herself, I felt more of my old wounds healing. Derek had wanted to start fresh in Thailand, thinking he could simply discard 23 years of marriage with a Facebook post. Instead, he gave me the push I needed to discover my true strength. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our best selves. Last week, I was organizing my home office when I found an old photo of Derek and me from our wedding day. I barely recognized the naive woman in the white dress, smiling up at a man she thought would protect her. I tucked the photo away in a box marked Past and turned back to my computer, where another thank you email awaited. This one was from a grandmother in Texas who had used my digital security tips to help her daughter escape an abusive marriage. "You taught us that being older doesn't mean being powerless," she wrote. "Knowledge truly is protection." These messages still bring tears to my eyes, but not from pain anymore. They remind me that sometimes our worst moments can lead to our greatest purposes. Derek thought he was writing the end of my story with that Facebook post, but he was actually writing its beginning. My new book comes out next month, and Diana tells me it's already generating buzz in legal circles. I'm booked solid with speaking engagements through the end of the year, teaching women how to protect themselves in an increasingly digital world. The very skills Derek belittled have become my strength and my legacy. Sometimes I wonder if Derek ever thinks about how spectacularly his plan backfired. But mostly, I'm too busy living my new life to dwell on the past. After all, someone did get their fresh start. It just wasn't him.